Real. Yes, hello and welcome to Release the Creative, your favorite show about creativity, cognition, and this week, thanks, it has pockets.
Pockets. Hot pockets.
No, although those are delicious. Have you ever noticed that if you see a woman and she's wearing a dress or a nice pair of pants or whatever, and you feel kind of like, oh, those are really cute. There's this phrase, and it's like ubiquitous, and it's unanimity of thanks, it has pockets, and they will then show you the delight that their dress and or pants and or article of clothing has pockets. Have you experienced this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't buy a lot of dresses myself, but I've noticed that yes, pockets in
really,
women's clothing is highly sought after and yet elusive.
No, so I have, I have 4 daughters and 1 son, and throughout my years of being married, we would talk, and the lack of pockets, back pockets, deep pockets, or even children, my daughters, when I will go buy clothing for them, they're little girls. My son has pockets. My daughter's pockets are often stitched shut, or they're fake. They're not real. And this is a fascinating thing, because if you talk to, in my experience, any woman, they'll extol how much they hate that.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, what is this? This is the man keeping us down, right? Or
is the damn the patriarchy.
Well, is it the patriarchy or is it capitalism? Which one is it today?
And that is one of the things I want to talk about today, because if it was capitalism, everyone wants this. So if it was capitalism, how is this not supply meeting demand? Because demand is there. Demand exists. It's very real. But then I don't want to get too deep into the feminism, capitalism, patriarchy type thing. But at the same time, why a little girl, my 6-year-old daughter, my 7-year-old daughter, they don't have pockets when my son, same age, twins no less, his do?
Yeah, so like the little girl thing is confusing, because my first guess was going to be, oh, well, women say they want pockets, but then when they look at the dresses, the ones with the pockets are bulkier, or
right.
Then they pick the other one because it looks better. But that has nothing to do with an 8-year-old.
Right. And I was just watching a TikTok, as we've talked on this show many times. I'm deep on the TikTok, you're deep on the Reddit. I was watching a TikTok recently where this woman was holding her toddler, probably 18-month, 2-year-old son, talking about how much she hated pockets, and she's like, "What the hell is this shit?" And she showed that the jeans of her toddler son had better pockets than she, an adult woman. And this has been one of the things that has always bothered me, because clothing designers are largely both women and gay men. So it doesn't feel patriarchal. But again, I'm not a designer. I'm not even particularly well dressed. So it got us both thinking, but it got us thinking about, like, how is it that in a world that claims to be, free market capitalism, is like, how is it that this thing that is so easy, it's not more expensive, the pocket line is already there, just make it deeper? Like, how
there
is
usually are fake pockets there,
and right? There's usually fake how is it that this thing that is so low bar, how is it that this is apparently so difficult for the man? And again, I say the man somewhat jokingly. If that's the answer, cool. But as we'll talk about later examples, it's not just in pants. There's other examples. But first, I want to do this. This is our first week. We've talked many, many times about going to have a guest on this show. We've talked about how once we went live, we wanted to start bringing in more voices that weren't cis-het white dudes, because there's voices out there that are better, and not better is not the right word, broader and differently experienced.
When it comes to us, better is the right word.
No, that's true. I have a camera and I'm going to use it, damn it. But so today I want to introduce a dear friend of mine. Her name is Juniper Finley. She is a published model. She's an amazing artist. She's just a badass diva who just exudes just a personality and has way more to say, specifically in fashion and design, as she is an artist, performance artist, model, and designer. Not fashion designer, just designer in general. No, I guess she does jewelry and stuff, but I'm gonna bring her in. And Juniper, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing just great. How are you?
I'm doing super well. So tell us, I mean, I gave you the briefest of intros. tell me a little bit about you, your design, your background, that are things that I don't. I mean, you don't have to brag too much about yourself, but give me a little bit of a background so we all know who you are.
Okay, so my name's Juniper, and so I actually have a background in started with performance art, and as I ventured through there, I got to the professional level, and once I kind of capped out, and if you've ever been in the performance industry, you know that you cap out at a pretty young age. So at about 22, I was done, and I actually started educating, and part of the education of the performance art is also the designing of the shows and also the uniforms. If you hear any clicky clacky, that is my dog. So in designing for uniforms and things like that, for performance, I did that for several years. Just the brief. We won a couple world championships. That was pretty cool.
No biggie.
So, and then now I am working more into the fine art, jewelry making, things like that, but also painting. And I just have my own love for fashion and self-expression.
No, love it. So, when I called you about this yesterday, you said you definitely had some things to. So let's just dive right in. You've heard and or probably uttered the phrase, "Thanks, it has pockets," I would assume.
Yes, I have also said, "Thanks, I wish it had pockets."
the slightly less common. I don't, but like it's amazing to me how often the exact phrase, like there's a script, "Thanks, it has pockets," as though that is some unfound mystery. Like, oh, I have discovered it. Talk to me about this.
So the euphoria of kind of you. If you've ever been around any feminine creatures, they tend to like adjust themselves a lot. They want to make sure that everything is just so. And every once in a while, there's a moment when you're running your hand down the side of the seam and you've had this dress for several years, and suddenly you'll notice something and you can slip your hand inside and there is a pocket. And let me tell you, the dance, the joy, the orchestral choir that backs up the mental thought there is incredible.
The undiscovered pocket?
This has happened to me so many times.
The euphoria of the undiscovered pocket. Okay.
Yes.
So let's just get to how is this, this is so... I don't know a woman that I haven't. Well, that's not true. I've had this conversation with so many women. I've seen so many TikToks, so many articles. Walk me through this, like from a design perspective, from a feminine perspective, if pockets are so rare that there is a euphoric hidden pocket dance. I've never owned a piece of clothing that didn't have pockets. I have fit a full-sized firearm into the front pocket of my standard jeans.
Wow.
And there's nothing special about those jeans. They were just jeans. Why is this so hard? If this is something everyone wants, which it seems to be, why is this something that supply is not rising to meet demand?
Oh, so there's a couple of aspects that you need to that one must understand about this. So there is the history, his story. I said that on purpose. And then
I had not caught the subtle. I had not. So good. Thank you for pointing that out.
So we have the history and then we have the industry. So in history, between 17th century and 19th century, we see the very first pockets for females. And they were very large pockets, because when I feel that the people designing them were obviously women.
Sure.
So they were these large sort of bag type things. And then there was like a tie, and you would put it just between the outer layer of your dress and the underpart. So when you were out and about, you could just pull it up and put things in there as needed. So
it's kind of like the first built-in satchel. Okay.
Yes, because purses weren't really
a thing yet. Yeah.
They weren't a thing. This was the very first purse, a pocket. Imagine that. So Once we're looking at that, we kind of like start to move forward into changes in the dress silhouette. And there was the initial, ooh, I don't want to wear my pocket because it's messing with the silhouette of my dress. So then we've invented the purse. So it literally just kind of detaches. They use a different type of fabric and they make it a little bit more fashionable. Now, this is where we have a division. We have the pocketists and we have the anti-pocketists. And yes, these are terms.
I was going to say, did you just make that up?
I mean, I saw it in a YouTube video, so
it must be real. Yes. Okay.
So we have, people who are all for the pockets and then people who are all for pushing fashion and doing something different.
Right.
Now, as we start to move things along even further, we start really getting into the 19th century, which is when we have the department stores and more capitalist type fashion.
Okay.
Once we get to this point, this is when women start wearing pants and things like this. And now we're going to get into the industry. So in the fashion industry, this is not a design issue. The designers are putting pockets into the jeans. What ends up happening is when it gets to the next level, which is once the designs are taken to the buyers and the people, well, not the buyers, what's the next level? The in-between, the people who are going to put it into production.
Production,
yeah. The production crew is going to look at it and go, okay, we want to make this garment, but we can only make it if it's going to cost this much to make it. So
you're saying that the pockets of women's clothing is falling on the cutting room floor because of cost? That feels like an odd place to cut. Again, all my pants have pockets. That feels like a weird place to cut costs.
And it doesn't all boil down to that. There's a lot of like give and take. There are different brands. Hold on. I have a little screenshot that has a little statistic for you. It states, I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but this is what the original pockets looked like. That is larger than a face.
That is like one of those like convention bags you get with like the drawstring, like little satchel, Yes. So the average pocket is 48% shorter and 6.5% narrower than most male pockets. I don't understand this. This makes no sense.
If you can imagine the difference of sticking your phone in one versus the other.
And what's strange is most, and this is, I say most, this is probably, I have the iPhone 12 mini because I like it as small as possible, but like everyone that I know that has the 12 like plus and the big screen, they tend to be more women in my experience. They have the bigger ones for the bigger screens. So they have the smaller pocket with the larger devices. It's crazy to me. I have the smallest phone that I can get. Like literally, if they had a smaller one that still had smartphone capabilities, I would have it smaller than this. But yeah.
I think that it's a balance thing because women do want pockets, but they also want fast fashion. Fast fashion needs to be cheap. So when you have the designer clothes, they're actually having larger pockets for the most part. They have larger pockets.
If I went to Fifth Avenue or Melrose or Rodeo Drive and I bought a $3,000 pair of paper denim cloth jeans, paper denim cloth are not $3,000, they're like $400. That would have a pocket. That's the assertion. Honestly, this is a real question. I don't know.
For the most part, yeah. My experience with, let's see, every brand's different because every production crew is going to be different. They're all trying to save money and provide for their customer differently.
Okay.
So they all have a formula, if that makes sense.
Okay. So in this particular case, so you're saying it's not a design issue. It's not that the lines are cleaner or better or sleeker.
That is true. That is true.
But I guess my point, if the cost of this material in bulk would be 15 cents, 20 cents. If we raise the price of a pair of jeans $1.50, the resounding demand from this, cis white, from this perspective, the resounding demand is ubiquitous. It's everyone. How is raising the price $5, $3, $1 and putting pockets as a standard? How is that not the right answer?
I mean, I don't disagree with you there. I feel like there's like this, when we're looking at the fit of a pair of pants, as the fit has gotten closer and closer to the skin, and we're using thinner and thinner fabrics, 2 extra layers and like a stitching seam at the bottom of a pocket underneath that whatever elastic type fabric is going to have more of a visual effect on the clothing, versus when you're purchasing like a pair of trousers from a designer. You know, that fabric is going to be a lot thicker. It's going to be like maybe wool or a completely different material that's going to be closer to what typically tailors make for men. Another aspect of that is just the fact that tailors have been making pockets and things for men for way longer than female sort of designers have started to do these things. Now, when we're looking in a modern time, I don't know why there's not more of a crossover.
So I guess there is the, before we move on to kind of the next subject, the next example of this that we're seeing, the question is this, that it touches on what you just said. Can you think of a reason in modern time, like we've been in kind of the throes of third wave feminism and a completely different production era for many, for several years now, this feels like something that could be fixed relatively fast. You know, in my lifetime, I've seen the rise of more plus size mannequins, plus size models, more natural. You know, we have unphotoshopped models, larger, you know, disabled, different. We are really attacking the paradigm of the wayfish size 2 model, and we're attacking this paradigm in fashion. How is it that something that feels to me to be the lowest bar is still seeming, again, I have no data here, to be such a problem? If you could boil it down to a single issue, is it just the history? Is it just the tradition?
I'm going to think, because I think, like I said, I think it's a formula. It's one of those things where so many different things kind of come together. When you're looking at anything in modern times, there is a history of it. And the history plus the way that it was treated, plus the way we now see it today, is going to affect everything. I think that we're on our way. I think that science needs to figure out stretchy fabric that's not going to show a pocket. I don't think that that's that far-fetched.
World hunger, world peace, women's pockets.
Yes. That's the one.
Colony on Mars. Like, yeah, we're going to find out, like, Elon Musk is going to get his colony on Mars, but men's spacesuits will have pockets and women's spacesuits won't. That's how it's going to play out. Like,
oh no! Can we discuss the all-female crew that went up and what they packed?
Yeah, that's another podcast in and of itself. So now I want to chime Jeff in here. I'm going to tag you in, Jeff. I want to talk a little bit about the other thing that kind of started this, the other ubiquitous design issue that we have seen. That isn't something that is wanted nor needed, but is ubiquitous.
Well, this is esoteric, and I have found that there are reasons for it, unlike the pockets, but it still is something that could be overcome. So what we're talking about here, let me see if I can bring this up, which I think I can, if I click that button. All right, here we go. Here's a Nissan.
Look at that, yeah.
Now this is just a car.
Yep.
And if I switch over here,
that's a Mercedes. There's absolutely no endorsements going on here.
No, this is something you're going to notice on almost every car these days. What we're looking at here is
that doesn't have one.
This is what I'm trying to show the difference between. So if you look around the wheel, there's kind of a lip, right? It's like a lip to the wheel.
Sexy curve. It's a hip shape.
And if you compare that to this car, you see how it's been like flattened as if you took a butter knife to it.
Lopped off. Yes.
Yeah. So this is kind of round and sexy, and this looks like it was smushed.
Yep.
Like a Persian cat nose. And
okay,
what you will find is that I picked the Nissan because this is really over. They do it large.
Most of them are about 2 inches. That one's like 5 or 6.
Yeah, they're usually between 1 and 2 inches. But if you go out, and I was looking yesterday on the highway when I was driving, it really is like 98% of cars now have that kind of flat edge. And it used to be all cars had that just kind of rounded, or there might be like a trim added on.
Think back to the old Chevys and the old Oldsmobiles. They were very hippish.
Or they might have like a little strip added on,
Right,
like
yes.
like you would in a house corner, but there was a lot of different ways of doing it, and now it's kind of all this way.
So what's the purpose?
And so the what I'm reading online is they used to make cars of steel, and you just form the steel however you want. And now they're made out of composites and thin metals, and basically it's structural. You can make it thinner, and it gives it a little more rigidity.
Oh, okay.
But as to why, like we saw the Nissan really overemphasized it, that's a style thing.
Sure.
And it's still, it makes it stronger. There's other ways they could solve it. Basically, the car industry decided, well, this is how
Quick and
cars
easy.
look now, and we're going to do it. What's interesting is I've never noticed this till I read about it, and I'm sure most of us have not noticed it.
No.
On the internet, car nerds, not a fan. So if you are someone who likes cars and is really into car design, and you see this and you're like, I hate that, I wish it would go back to the way it was, and they all have very strong opinions. I've read message boards where everybody just like hates this design trend, and they hate a thing that you and I had never even noticed.
Much like women's pockets, not something that affects us particularly.
So if it doesn't, something you don't think about, you don't think about it. But what fascinates me is the industry went in a way that the aficionados really hate, but like they're not large enough numbers to matter, really.
Interesting.
And so this is kind of a weird thing where generally you have, if you manufacture something, you have your core group of fans, and like when they announce new Apple products, there's the people there in the audience who are cheering for it, and then the rest of us are like, it's a phone, but in this case, people who love cars don't love this thing they're doing, and to me that's interesting. That if nobody else cares, why wouldn't you cater to that market?
This is interesting. I think I would like to draw this to fine art.
Okay.
Because anyone who is going to dive so far deep into any avenue of any subject, okay, they are one of a few, right? Now, when you're talking about something that is going to be accessible to most everyone, those people kind of stop mattering unless you care about their opinions. You see what I mean?
I remember when I was in film school and I was talking during Composer Day, this guy came in and was talking about how he, for $2,000, could buy a sample rack where he could, with his keyboard, play any instrument you could name, the bassoon, the oboe, he could play anything. And it used to be $2,000 an hour to book the LA Philharmonic studio, but it was $2,000 one time. And I said, but does it sound the same? And he said, 90%. He's like, it sounds 90% the same. Can I tell the difference? Absolutely. Can anyone that isn't me tell the difference? Absolutely not. So is it $2,000 one time and I can do my entire orchestration for my entire movie? Or I can spend $2,000 an hour, probably upwards of $200,000 sometimes, to do the score, and only 10% of my audience even noticed. Is it worth that? And the answer from a capitalist standpoint is, of course not.
There's an interesting, even from a capitalist standpoint, there's a phenomenon. So like these days, the difference between Macs and PC is not that different, really, honestly. 20 years ago, there was a bigger, you could say, oh, these do this and those do that. And back then, I've been an Apple fan since forever.
Sure.
And I was a video editor, and I had my, my $5,000 Mac Tower. And they didn't sell a lot of those, like it's a small professional market, and they're more interested in selling, millions of something. But here's the interesting thing.
A million iPhones is better than $5,000 computers. Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing. Even though I only bought, one expensive computer every decade, I sold a lot of Macs because people would come to me. They said, Jeff, you know about computers, you're a professional. What should I get? I said, I love my Mac. And I tell them buy the, the $1,000 MacBook. Like, I didn't own a $1,000 MacBook. It's not but I was used to the expensive one, and so I recommended the cheap one. And you and I have both used like Canon SLRs forever, and these are big, expensive pro cameras. Same thing. But I mean, these days people don't buy point and shoot cameras, but 15 years ago, when they said, "What should I buy?" I said, "Oh, get a Canon. Go to Best Buy, get whatever Canon you can afford.
The XTI, the whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. Just whatever you can afford." And that was because I was used to the pro product. So there's influencers basically, and it's the same reason that car companies like Toyota really wanted to get into truck racing 30 years ago. They were like, we need to be in truck racing. Well, you don't make money from truck racing,
right? But
then people are like, well, your trucks are good, I should buy them.
It's the same thing. Like if you go, I'm a big motorcycle guy. If you watch motorcycle racing, you're like, oh man, the winning, I can't remember his name. They called him the Doctor. He has a name that isn't the Doctor, but like he was amazing, and he was on the Ducati team. If you think you can buy the Ducati he was riding, you're insane. Like, the thing that he was riding it was built by engineers who had an association with Ducati. It was not a Ducati motorcycle.
Yeah, they show that they have the expertise at that level.
Right.
So you assume that it trickles down. And so that's where you on the one hand, it's like, well, I don't have to care about my core audience because they're small, but they're the influencers.
So I actually want to touch on this. So I was interested, if you haven't heard of Frank Stevenson, please Google him right now. I'm going to extol some of his merits. I had an awesome opportunity to interview Frank Stevenson for my book. He is the guy who brought the Mini from the old Mini to the new Mini into the new world.
Yeah.
He's the one who designed the Fiat 500 when it came back, and Jennifer Lopez singing "I'm Alive," like that was him. He was a designer for Maserati and McLaren, Ferrari. Like, he is one of the foremost designers in the world. And we were talking about this kind of general concept of design in general, not just cars, but design in general. And he said the problem is that engineers do not care what things look like. Engineers are not designers, and we need to stop thinking of engineers as designers. He's like, so you'll see this car show, and they'll come up with this concept car, and it's beautiful. It's a thing of beauty. The lines are sexy, and it's awesome. Engineers haven't seen that yet. That is a prototype car. It runs,
art first.
But it's art first. And then the designers come in, and the engineers come in and go, oh, well, the brakes are going to get too hot. We have to drill holes in that so that airflow can get to the brakes. Mm-hmm. Oh, you know what? That grill's not going to work. It's not going to let go. It works for a concept car that was never going to drive very much, but it doesn't work in the real world for very long. He said, so yeah, we have to drill holes in this, and we have to flatten this out because of aerodynamics. And, over 1,000 cars over 3 years, there's going to be this many accidents. And so now by the time the car goes into production 3 years later, people are all excited that this car finally is coming out, and it is gross, and they've taken the sexy out. It's like the good designers, like the ones you showed on the Mercedes, the good designers knew that going in. Mm-hmm. And so they made sure a good designer is also part engineer, because they went in and they said, let's make it so that the engineers can't complain about anything. Right. Let's make it so that, hey, if I know that my brake calipers need airflow, otherwise they're going to overheat, let's make sure that I've designed into the sex of it, into the art of it. Let's make sure that I design airflow to the brakes, which isn't something that a futuristic car drawer is going to think to draw, but the engineers get it, and they don't care what your design looks like. They care about if the car is going to run. And so it's an interesting dichotomy of making sure your design, your form meets function. Otherwise, the people in charge of function will give two shits about your form.
Yeah.
So this is something that I have some experience with as a designer.
Okay.
So in show design, so the sport that I work in, it fills up an entire gym. Okay. And you sit in the audience. So it's taking up like an entire basketball gym, and you pull out, I design like a giant tarp that gets printed, and it lays out, and it has this tiny little grid on it, and you can, like, everybody knows where to go the whole time. It's great. We also kind of, as the sport has evolved, we've started adding props that need to move, props that need to be maneuvered. And I live here in northern Alabama, where there is actually Huntsville, Alabama, which is Rocket City. All of my students' parents are essentially rocket scientists.
What idiots, right? Like,
oh, they're fantastic. Yeah. Let me just tell you, shout out to all of the engineers who have helped me make these designs happen. However, as we dig in, I draw the picture and I go, wouldn't this be cool? And they say, yeah, but it's not going to look like that. And so we've actually, like, the collaborative effort back and forth, it gets heated. It is exciting. It's boring. It has so many different layers to it, and all just to get to this final push and pull of how do we bring the ideas together.
Absolutely. And, like, it's equal parts arts and science. It's equal parts. So to kind of sum up the Jeff point and then kind of sum it all up together. So what's the answer with the car thing? I mean, it's meant to be, so it's fast fashion. It's so that they can do it quickly and cheaply. That feels like it's probably more capitalist in nature than anything else.
Yeah, I'd say in this case, it's what. So you remember when we were kids, and you'd go
not much.
Yeah. Well, do you remember you used to have to pay for refills at McDonald's?
Oh yes, I remember when free refills became a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it became a thing like this is a thing that what's the phrase, slowly and then all at once, right?
Right.
There was like some people did it and then other people did it, and then all of a sudden it was everywhere.
And then even more so, they then started putting the soda fountains out from behind. So because for a while you had to bring your cup and ask for a refill.
Yeah. So my point is, once there's a certain critical mass of once half of fast food places are doing free refills, everyone else has to follow.
Or
this kind of the inverse. If every car company's doing this, what's the incentive to change? Like, what people are going to complain,
especially on a sub $40,000 model.
Yeah, the people that complain are like, well, they complain, but what are you going to do? If it was like a half and half thing, there'd be choices. But if there's not, then and this is kind of where we go with the pockets too. Do we need like 40% of women's clothes to have pockets? Then everyone will, but it's constantly 10%, 10%, 12%, 10%, and it's never enough.
And if there is, as Junie was pointing out, if there is any design element where the lines aren't as or the heat thing you were saying, like it's more bulky, it's warmer, so you're saying that even with the critical demand, that the actual demand isn't there.
Yes, but that's putting it on the consumer. It's more of a there has to be a tipping point where it's worth it to the people who aren't doing it.
Yeah,
need to be missing out. And right now, it
has to be inconvenient.
Yeah, there's too much on the side of the scale. It's a scale, and there's too many on the one side of the scale.
I don't need to add pockets because where else are you going to go? No one else has pockets either.
Right. It's like you can maybe find it, but there's not enough. Once though, it's when you're in a particular store. If you're like, oh, here's one with pockets, here's one without, then it becomes a choice. Right now, it's no pockets unless I go way out of my way to really find
wear trousers or wear a really high.
It's the
same thing. If I want to buy a Honda Civic and put a body kit on it to get that sexy hip thing, I can do that. Their body kits are made by I can modify anything. If I want to add pockets, I can. But the whole thing is that right now I don't need to give you the choice because you don't have the choice anywhere else.
Yeah. So like if someday it gets to the point where everywhere you go, there's 3 without pockets and 1 with pocket, like every single store, then it might start to change.
Interesting.
I think as we are working towards to bring it back to fashion, but even still, as we see an evolution in the world. So when we're talking about, actually, I'm not going to talk about fashion. We're going to talk about streets. So we're coming back to the 19th century, which is kind of the same point with some of that fashion. When you're looking at widening streets, you look at more room for more car. What I was seeing with that Nissan is consumers want space inside their car. They don't care what it looks like on the outside as much as they care about how comfortable they are in it.
That's true.
So you are working within a global society where you're having to say, okay, this is how wide the average street is, and people want more room inside their car. You know, it's just like the silhouette thing. People want the nice silhouette and they want pockets. Okay, do they want the illusion of pockets or do they want real pockets? What is the give and take?
Right. And I will say, in all dead serious, if I am dressing, like, just to hit on the pocket thing, even being a guy who has tons of room back, if I am trying to look nice, I am a pack rat that just puts random shit. Like, I'm a squirrel with stuff in his cheeks. Like, it's bad. But if I'm like going out to a nice thing, I will make sure my keys are in my bag, my wallet, maybe in my wallet, my cell phone is in my jacket. Like, I will do everything I can to keep things out of my pockets. Otherwise, I really will look like a chipmunk. And like, I will have so much garbage in my pocket. So
it gets bulky.
It's a blessing and a curse, really. I can, but then I do.
Sounds like you need a purse.
For the record, like, I'm the other way here, and we're finally getting to a point now that I can. But like, as a younger guy, you know, in my 20s, like 20 years ago, I would carry like the earlier days of like laptop bags weren't as much a thing, and I got shit for carrying a man bag. Or there's a whole Friends episode about a man bag, and like, I have thought that it was unfair that men couldn't carry purses. Now we can, but like, that's new. I have wanted to carry a purse much of my life.
We've always had the out that it's a camera bag or a laptop bag, but yeah. I have a lot of stuff in my laptop bag that isn't laptop.
So men get to wear purses before women get bigger pockets?
Welcome to the patriarchy. Thanks for joining our show.
And we're back.
No, I mean, yeah. Jeff and I, like he was saying, we've carried camera bags our whole life. So we could always walk in with a purse and they're like, it said Loa Pro on it, or like it was, which is a camera company, like a camera. It was always really excusable, but my lunch was in it. Like my camera and my lunch and my wallet and my keys and some paperwork. Like I was carrying a purse before I was allowed to because I was a camera guy. But like now, like I was at a convention recently and I bought a hip bag and I'm like, dude, I'm rocking a hip bag. Come at me. I love it.
Yeah, you remember back when our kids were young, we go to theme parks.
Yes.
And I always used to I had my camera bag.
Sure.
And I would have the 3 diapers and the baby wipes in there. So, and my wife wouldn't, she'd have her normal purse.
Yeah.
But that was it. So essentially, I was carrying the diaper bag.
Right.
But if I was carrying a diaper bag from Bye Bye Baby,
Yeah.
like that would have been like, oh, look at him. Where, you know, but no, I had it. It's a camera bag. Like it's
and I will
stealth.
say, so our oldest children, our oldest kids are only 6 months apart, are only 13 years old. But I will say that when I was looking for a diaper bag that I wasn't ashamed to carry, when Salem was born, I could not find one. And now man diaper bags, like tactical camo, like Molly, like, you know, looks like a gun bag. They're a thing. And I think that's good, but I think it's still so interesting that the rapid inclusion of men in purses and diaper bags is way more rapid. Supply is meeting demand instantly, whereas women, pockets still difficult. And I think this is fascinating and really, really messed up.
That's an interesting topic to start bringing up. I will say that I have seen in more of like higher fashion diaper bags and things like that have like gotten better even still for women as well, where it's like, okay, I'm not walking around with this thing with this like crazy childlike print on it. It's not for the baby, it's for me, you know.
I've seen that in that, actually, for the record, in that exact same span of time when we were looking for purses, both my wife and I, not purses, diaper bags, I could find nothing I wanted to carry, and neither could she. It was all like vinyl and elephant prints or bright blue corduroy or some ridiculous. But now you can buy a diaper bag that almost looks like a purse, and you can buy a diaper bag for a guy that looks like it has like explosives in it. It's a tactical bag. Anyway, so I kind of want to just kind of sum this all up. First, Junie, where can people find you? I know you have 2 Instagram pages, but for your art and your model, and like if someone was like interested in following and hearing more of your journey, where would they do that?
I would actually send them probably to my art Instagram. I am recently coming out as non-binary and going through a little name change. So my art Instagram is Bailey, BAYLY_art. And that is named after my sweet, lovely grandmother.
Awesome. And so we're definitely going to put that at Bailey Art in the show notes so that people can find you there. But
Wonderful.
No, your work is awesome. I'm maybe having some of it on my wall. You and I are collaborating this summer. So definitely follow Juniper. She has some great things coming out. But also I wanted to, before I kind of sum up, I really want to thank you for being on. We definitely I needed a voice that wasn't just us, especially in talking about fashion and design, because neither of us is fashionable or designers. So definitely thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We will talk again soon. So in kind of summation and just kind of release the creative speak and in just creativity and cognition and conformity, like so much of what we talk about is we have the Frank Stevenson example of if you want your design to last, it has to be engineer proof. Mm-hmm. And then your point, if you want it to be good, it has to meet, Simon Sinek talks about this as well. You have to meet a certain part of market penetration, or even if people like it, it's just not available enough to be relevant.
Right.
So from a communications standpoint, I think that those two things together, it's if you're the guy standing on the street corner screaming the end is coming, even if you're right, even if you are 100% correct, there really is a dragon in the sky. If you're the guy that is so far afield of the message, if your product, your service, your people, your thing, your appearance is so far afield that it doesn't resonate, or even if it does, it's too far, it doesn't meet penetration. It doesn't hit that point. But the idea of market shifts is incremental. It's the idea of we have to do big things in small ways so that they, diaper bags already existed. They didn't invent the tactical diaper bag all at once. It was a incremental innovation. It was a small change.
Right.
And I think that there's a lesson there, both in pockets and in cars and in design and in everything, that your form has to meet function, or function will almost always win, unless you're in the military. Form will almost always win. Sorry, function will almost always win, because it has to work.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Steve Jobs combined that. People confuse. They say there's design and function are different things. Steve Jobs said design is how it works.
Right.
And that's a complicated concept for some people to get.
Right.
But yeah, it's possible to gather it all together.
So as we move forward, as we do this thing, as we're trying to communicate big changes, as you go into your boss, as you go into the idea is, if you are so crazy left field that people can't even begin to wrap their head around it, women pockets, that's insane. Which is such a good example, because it's not insane. That's so low hanging fruit. But the idea is to be designed well, function well, meet the demand without creating some crazy problem that an engineer has to drill holes for there to get airflow.
Yeah.
And I think that's the goal, is that as we're communicating big changes and we're doing big innovations and we're trying to be creative, that creativity is great. But if you're the art project standing on the street corner that people are uncomfortable to look at, you might be innovative, but you're not going to penetrate cognition. You're not going to make changes. That change happens when you are doing big things that people can get behind very quickly, because they're already primed for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough hill to climb.
It is a tough hill. It's like, all you have to do is, it's a little bit like Scotty talking about in the new Star Trek films that I know you love so much. It's that, transporting someone at warp is like shooting a bullet with a smaller bullet while riding on the back of a horse. And that's a little bit like what innovation is. It's, you got to shoot a bullet with a smaller bullet while riding on the back of a horse. And believe it or not, I actually think that's just like he figured it out. I think that's a lot easier to do, because I think a lot of people take factors that aren't factors and put them in the way. And we'll talk more about that in the weeks to come. This has been a fun week. Thank you so much to Juniper Finley. Check her out at Bailey Art. That will be in the show notes as well. And we will all see you next week.